Welcome back, Nigeria. You're still watching the TVC Breakfast Show. We go straight into this, where the recently concluded Anambra State Governorship Election has continued to generate discussions about Nigeria's democratic process, voter participation, and the performance of the electoral umpire. Now, the Independent National Electoral Commission declared Charles Chukwuma Soludo of the All Progressives Grand Alliance the winner of the 2025 Anambra Governorship Election. Governor Soludo polled a whopping 422,664 votes to defeat the All Progressives Congress candidate Nicholas Ukachukwu, who scored 99,445 votes. According to INEC, 584,054 votes were valid out of the 595,298 total votes that were cast, with Soludo winning in all 21 local government areas of the state. Now, while the process was largely peaceful in many areas, reports of late arrival of materials, malfunctioning devices, and low voter turnout raised concerns about logistical preparedness. Joining us via Zoom right now for this conversation is the Head of Knowledge Management and Learning, YAGA Africa, Mrs. Safiya Bichi. You're very welcome, Ma. Good morning.
Good morning, and thanks for having me on your show.
Thank you for joining us here today. Now, I read about YAGA, and you are a non-profit organization that really focuses on promoting civic participation, human rights, and encouraging, democratic processes and the concept of democracy in Nigeria. It's wonderful work that you're doing. Now, from YAGA's data insights and your observation of this past Anambra elections, where do you think we are at democratically? What can this tell us, this concluded election, about the evolving democratic processes or electoral processes right now in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you so much for inviting me. I'll first start by saying that in terms of our electoral process, there's a significant improvement in one of the weakest links, which is logistics management. We've seen how in the past elections, we've moved with about 20% more. In last election, we had polls opening by 7:30, which is the designated time as stated in INEC guideline, which is 7:30. And we've seen people, only 17% of polling units opening in the last election. In the election before that, we're seeing just 28%. But as at Saturday, last election, we saw that polls, 49% of polls were opened by 7:30. Is that where we want to be? No, but but we cannot ignore the significant improvement in that, and also in the general processes. Beavers were deployed, rightly deployed to all the polling units. In 90% of polling units, beavers worked perfectly well throughout the elections, and in about 5 or 6% of polling units, we saw that the beavers malfunctioned, but were fixed or either fixed or replaced. Well, in just about 2 or 3%, there was no replacement or malfunctioning. This shows that in terms of the electoral process, there's significant improvement from what we have, and INEC to an extent is mastering how to deploy some of this technology. We had a good outing also in terms of deployment of some of these materials in the last elections, in the recent past elections. But the biggest threat has been, and the biggest threat we're experiencing now to our democratic system is this pandemic, or let me describe it, a virus of vote buying. This also stared its head in this last election, in the Saturday 8th election. We saw that in the Edo 2024 elections. We saw that in Ondo 2024 elections, and we saw it on Saturday. And we know that this is not just a threat to our elections. It undermines the principle of elections. It's not just a threat to our democracy, but it undermines the principle of elections. And these are some of the issues we think that is right. It's high time we tackle it, because it's becoming a pandemic in our electoral election day process, in our electoral process generally. So this is time for us to call on all the stakeholders, and this is the time for us to revisit some of the proposals we've had in the past, especially on Electoral Offense Commission. People need to be called to book so that they can serve as deterrence to this virus that is spreading very fast.
Okay. The election was described by a whole lot of Nigerians as free and fair. but how free and fair is the free and fair of that election? That is one of the questions I want to ask you. The second one is that the gains that were recorded in this election, don't you think it's because it's only one state? Are we looking at a situation where we'll have the same level of success at the general election?
Okay, thank you so much. Perhaps what occasioned this statement or the conclusion that the election was free and fair is because the vote cast, the total vote announced by INEC is a reflection of the votes cast at the polling unit. But we know that in terms of assessing the credibility of elections, there are lots of indicators that need to be considered. And that's why in my initial statement, I mentioned that vote buying itself undermines the principle of elections. And if you consider that within the context of this election, you understand that there are some credibility issues when it comes to vis-a-vis that. And the most interesting thing is that this vote buying did not happen. It was not just done by one political party to say that, oh, the party bought all the votes. A lot of parties, most of the parties that had the majority votes were involved in this vote buying. So this is on one side. On the other side is on the aspect of probably because Anambra is known for logistical issues when it comes to elections. This is the first time in the last 3 years we're seeing that polls were opening early. Almost 50% of polls were open by 7:30, which is a total departure from what we've had. Then the thought is the fact that the security environment in the state was not heated as compared to what we've had in the last election and even the election before last. But more specifically is the last election. Some people describe the last election as war. We've seen that even election day officials and some electoral officers refused to deploy refused to deploy in the last election because the security environment was not safe. And perhaps it's time to commend the security agents. And you also know that in terms of conduct of security agents, there's a significant improvement in the professionalism of security agents in this election as compared to our past experiences, specifically the Ekiti 2018 elections, where we've heard of election no be war and a lot of security agents acting unprofessionally. But in recent times, and even in the Saturday 8th elections, we've seen some level of professionalism. But again, there's still a gap there. One of the gaps we've noticed is the fact that there was a disproportional distribution of security agents. I'm not saying that it must be equal across polling unit, because based on intelligence, there could be some intentional deployment. But what we've seen shows that that's not the case. So, for instance, in some polling units, you see that you see that the polling unit has one security agent, in some 2, some 7, some 10, and you'll be wondering what's the reason behind this kind of variation. And we've also, the second part is that we've seen security van moving from polling unit to polling unit and checking if there's a security agent in the polling unit. If there is, they might probably drop one. If there's none, they will drop the number of security agents they fell. So it shows that there was no intentional deployment of security agents across the polling unit, because day before elections, security agents should have had the list of polling units in the state and should have also planned and know where you're deploying, not just moving random as if you're working you're moving on a taxi or on a train to drop citizens, to stop by every bus stop. That was the kind of scenario that happened. But in terms of professionalism and attitude towards citizens, I think the security agents have done considerably well, but they can do better. They can also do better. The next I'm going to talk about is in terms of engagement and conduct of security agents is in handling the issue of vote buying. I know that INEC is the lead agency in terms of electoral offenses, but again, they work closely with security agents. Some of these vote buying are happening right before the security agents, and nothing has been done. We've also got reports of people canvassing for votes in the polling units. This is also a violation of the electoral law and the electoral act and the INEC electoral guidelines. So these are some of the issues I think they should consider. We've also seen on the news that about only 2 or 3 persons were arrested by EFCC on the accounts of vote buying. We're expecting to see more than that, and this is the time that security agencies needs to stand up to the occasion to address this menace that is killing our electoral system.
Yeah.
We should see more people being arrested. We should even see high-profile people, that is the funders of this vote buying, being arrested. This will probably be, by this, I believe that this issue will be tackled. It will serve as a deterrent to people that are looking at this as a practice. It has become a practice now for people, and it has become, in fact, it's becoming more structural than we think than it used to be, and this also must be settled. If not, it will continue to undermine the credibility of the elections and the vote or the will of the citizens.
Well said, Mrs. Bichi. It would seem like politicians, have also found another way, since now maybe ballot snatching would not really get the score in. So why don't we induce voters to go there and vote for us? But that cannot continue. And thank you very much for really highlighting that. But let's look at this report you churned out. Yaga Africa, I mean. There's a section here called result verification, and I'm trying to go through it to understand the totality of it. I see the official result by INEC, I see your estimate, then I see margin of error, and something you called here lower and upper limit. What exactly do you mean by this? Because you categorize this like along party lines, the APC, ABGA, LP, PDP, and YPP. Could you explain to us, I wish Nigerians can see this, but could you explain to us exactly what Yaga Africa was trying to achieve here with that section of your result verification?
So because Yaga Africa deploys the PRVT, which allows you to use scientific, systematic way to deploy to sample polling units, as well as technology to harvest or to gather and analyze the information, we're able to use statistics, specifically, as I've mentioned, to deploy to polling units. And because we deploy to sample polling units, in statistics, there's a room for marginal error. And what we're saying is that if you look at the official result, for instance, if APC has 17.3% of the polling of the votes, and our estimate, based on Yaga estimate and the tabulation of the result we collected from our sample polling unit, we estimated that APC will have 16.8% of the votes. But again, our margin of error, we're saying that it can be either less than 16% by 1.7 or more than 16% by 1.7, because we did not deploy to all the polling units. This is a room that our exact result, this is like a scope that given that our exact result should range between that scope and that scope. And after the competition, that was why, for instance, I'm using APC result. We're having 15.1% and 18%. That is to say, no matter what happens, APC results should fall between 15.1% and 18.5%. And if you look at INEC official result shows that the official result shows is 17.3%, which seems to be within the boundary of our estimate. And that was the same thing that happened for ABGA, for LP, and other parties. So by this, we're able to know whether the result announced by INEC reflects the true result of vote cast at the polling unit. And that's why we're able to say, yes, this election result announced, we're able to verify to say, yes, this result reflects what was cast, what the votes from the polling unit. And if it has fallen out of this margin, for instance, if the result of, let's say, APC was 12%, or let's say 20%, we would have said within our estimate, this is not a reflection of the results or the vote cast in the polling unit. And that's just a brief summary of what that means. So this helps us, and this gives us the opportunity to know what and the direction the polls is going to. I can tell you that because of the statistics and technology, we usually have the results as early, even before the final computation of the result. And this is helping us as civil society organization, as an observer group, as the citizens' representatives. And when I say representative, not in terms of lawmaking, to be able to share feedback with the citizens. So ours is to observe, and also our allegiance is to the citizens of Nigeria, to tell them that what exactly happens at the polls, especially when it comes to result tabulation. But we've seen that in recent times, political parties also understand that the reforms we've had in our electoral system, electoral process, especially the technical aspect of election management in INEC, has improved significantly. And it's difficult for people to manipulate that.
You know, Mr. Bichi, it's a very good one that Yaga Africa is doing on this now, so as to be able to checkmate INEC and, you know, the process of correlating results together. And so this is a very good one. Well done. We hope to see more of this in subsequent election as we get on. Olamide, you want to put in a question?
Yes, thank you so much, Bichi, Ms. Bichi. As you rightly know, there's so much hardware and election tools that are important in making a successful election process. Material deployment, power supply, security coordination, you know, tech-driven election tools. That is very important. But you raise a very pertinent issue. You called it a virus. I really like that, of vote buying. And so we say that we're ready for tech-driven elections, and these put things that make them make the election process more transparent. But is Nigeria, in your opinion, really ready for truly tech-driven elections? Because on one hand, this is hardware that we put on ground to ensure free and fair elections. On the other hand, you have the software of vote buying, of all sorts of other things that go on behind that sabotage tech-driven transparent elections. Where do we find the middle ground? Do you really think that these tech-driven election solutions are viable in Nigeria?
Yeah, I think that they're viable in Nigeria. We're already using technology. I don't know if I'm getting the statistics right, but in the last 8 years, we've based on analysis, INEC has introduce different technological processes and systems in the electoral management. Before now, we did not have online voter registration. We had it it started a few years ago. And we're even improving our technology in terms of accreditation. Initially, it was card reader. Now we're using beavers. And the question is, what kind of technology do we need to? And technology evolves. But I believe that Nigeria is ready, and Nigeria is already using lots of technology to address and manage elections on election day and even pre-election environment. It's time for us. The only thing we need now probably is to legalize election result transmission, which is one of the weakest links in terms of election day management. And that's why at Yaga Africa WTV, we deploy observers to collate results from the polling unit, which we believe that this is the point where the result is pure and unaltered. Anything can happen at the collation center. And that's the reason why we're saying that if anything if there's any change at the collation center, we will be able to dictate it, because we're able to get the result from its purest form. But I believe that Nigeria is ready, and it's about deploying the right technology at the right time. And sometimes when people talk about technology, election technology, their mind goes to internet voting, not even electronic voting. Electronic voting is different from internet voting. And these are some of the things we need to look at. Before now, we were not doing biometric. We did not have a biometric voter register. Now we're maintaining that. So there are lots of reforms I think we should go ahead and we can explore. And technology only helps us to make things efficient. But the issue of vote buying cannot be handled effectively by technology. Some aspect can be handled by technology. But again, I want to put it out that this technology is also what is making it difficult for one person to wake up and change the election results, as we've seen in 2003, as we've seen in 2007. And that's why the politicians are seeing that now is very, very important for them to start buying votes. And like I've always said, if the votes are not important, nobody will buy this vote. Yeah. And that's why they're going to go and buy this vote. But I'll also say that if citizens comes out in mass, it will be difficult for them to buy everybody's vote. And perhaps they are going to give up on buying votes. So citizens should also mobilize, turn out and vote, because not voting is also voting itself, because you're allowing people to decide for you who will be your future leader. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Indeed.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Bichi. Indeed, I really look forward to a day when the election transmission will be fully automated. Thank you for reminding us that we all have a role to play in democracy and a truly free and fair election. Thank you so much, ma.
Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Very insightful conversation as always. But we move on now, where tensions are rising within the PDP as a rift between acting national chairman Umar Damagum and FCT minister Nyesom Wike deepens. Will unity prevail or will the cracks widen? Please join us after the break for this conversation. Don't go anywhere.